welcome to another drive-in double feature. I'm Ryan,
I'm Nathan.
and this is the podcast where we talk about two movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before we get into anything, we have a Patreon over at patreon.com/drive-in double feature podcast. Nathan, I was at my local landfill the other day,
Oh,
and
okay. What were you doing there?
I was just looking for some scrap metal for my
Mm,
various scrap metal projects that I do, where I
yes.
fuse metal together and make
Hmm.
very beautiful metal sculptures with. And
Yes. Thank you for the gift, by the way.
uh, oh, yeah, I hand carved a piece of wood for you. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
And uh, yeah, so I ran into somebody and they were picking through um some just the landfill over there, and I said, "Oh yeah, what are you looking for?" They're like, "Oh, I'm looking for some hidden gems." And I said, "Oh, really?" Yeah, they're like, they said, "Yeah, just like the hidden gems that Nathan and Ryan talk about over on their
Hmm.
Patreon, where they have some fun interview questions, they have some fun games, they have some fun flick fights, some real hidden gems over there on the Patreon, just like what's
Hmm.
in this local landfill." And they said, "You know what? It's only $5 a month." And I said, "Oh, wow, that's really interesting." And they said, "I wish Nathan and Ryan knew how much we loved them." And I said, "I think they know."
Which is so funny. I feel like they've heard that line so many times now. They're that big of fans.
They're just pouring in the support.
That's awesome.
But like I said, it's only $5 a month and it does not affect any regular content. But today we are talking about 1970s Hi Mom, which is directed by Brian De Palma. So I found out midway watching through this movie that this movie was actually a sequel to the movie Greetings,
Yeah,
which I had no idea about.
I had no idea either. It's funny. I was talking to one of our friends about this, and it's like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna watch Hi Mom," and then he was like, "Oh, yeah, that's a sequel to this movie." And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's the sequel to this movie," and I was like, "Huh?" And I looked it up. I was like, "Oh," so I didn't even realize that either.
Yeah, because I thought this was like one of Robert De Niro's first movies, which it is, but that one was earlier. It was like from the 60s.
Hmm.
And it's a very interesting movie. But I feel like though, even if I did watch Greetings, I still feel like I'd be missing some context there.
Oh yeah, it's one of those movies. I don't think you even gotta watch it. It's just already is just an offbeat movie, and I think I don't think it's that connected. I mean, I might change my mind when we watch Greetings one day, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, like how the movie starts, it starts with a POV shot of you, like the camera, like going into like this like dilapidated apartment, and
Hmm.
the superintendent of this apartment is basically just like, "Hey, everything comes as is, I just, it's going to be $75 a month." And they're like, "But the ad said 40." He's like, "Yeah, but I didn't realize all this furniture
Yeah,
was in here." And it
I
just
didn't know it come with all this.
so now I got to charge you more, and like the furniture is all like crappy and
Yeah,
everything,
there's a full
and
cat litter box in there, and
yeah,
Robert De Niro's like, "Oh, you gonna dump that before I move in?" And he's like, "No, you can
and
take care of it yourself."
he's like, "No, you can take care of it." And it's like, "Look, bathroom/kitchen sink right here. You can take a bath or wash the dishes, and it's great." And like that was probably the funniest part of the movie for
Yeah,
me.
yeah. No, in the beginning, I feel like it had a really fun energy to it. And like, yeah, that was funny. Um, and like just the way it cuts to like, I'll take it. After all of that, Robert De Niro decides he's just gonna take it.
Yeah, so that's when you reveal that Robert De Niro is like does like the whole like, "Yeah, that sounds great," even though it's like a really crappy apartment. And how this movie starts, this movie has it's like a two-part movie kind of,
Yeah,
where
it hops around.
it's very much like Robert De Niro is like a voyeur, and he's really into voyeurism, and he feels like the next big porno or video or whatever movie that people want to watch is other people just living their lives normally without them being aware that they're
Yeah.
being watched.
I wish this was the whole movie. I do. I think this idea is fun and maybe more in line with what De Palma is like, with Robert De Niro recording people across the street doing whatever and selling it as porno. I was like, wow, that's an interesting concept. Kind of dark. This is only 5 years after Mickey One, by the way, which very different movies. Very different times still, but I don't know. The idea is there. I think that idea is pretty fun.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen more like that probably. The movie goes into like these really long vignettes though of like people are doing in their apartments and kind of like Mickey One, like they do like a lot of fast motion scenes where like everyone's just
Yeah.
like running around crazy like they're cartoon characters kind of.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like Rear Window where like you're just like looking at these people living their lives, but they're just running around really fast, like throwing themselves. A lady's getting painted black at one point, and I don't. Yeah, but these like you said, they're vignettes. They're long. Like these aren't like short, like oh, like a montage. You watch these for quite a bit.
Yeah, and I I really at first am trying to like figure out like okay, what's going to be the plot of the movie and then it starts going into it a little bit because he does find like this real kind of like sleazy guy
Hmm.
that's he's like trying to explain to him about this idea he has for a porno. It's like, hey, like I really think this is like the next big thing that, I think people are really going to be interested in this type of stuff. And he takes him up to like the top of the building. And it's like, okay, see, we're going to watch these people live their lives. And he like hands him like a telescope or
Hmm.
whatever. And the guy's just like, it's like, I can barely see out of this thing. He's like, look, he's like, and like he takes off the telescope and he's just like staring. He's like, look, I feel like it looks better without the telescope. And like, I thought that like those kind of bits were funny where it's just like them like rambling.
Yeah, yeah, because it's a funny idea there. It's kind of like Robert De Niro's like crazy, like he's just some weirdo. Because I like the bit where he's like in the porn shop trying to sell the picture of the skyscraper. It's literally just a giant photo of the skyscraper, and he's like, "Yeah, this is it. This is what these people want." And like the sleazy guy is like brings a guy in, is like, "Is this what would do you want this? Would you do you find this attractive?" Which is silly.
Yeah. And it ends up leading to like the guy does give him like an investment and he's like, okay, well, like go buy like a real camera and like do whatever you get. Like here's I think he said like $2,000 or something like that. Like just go nuts, get the nicest camera you can. And
Hmm.
he ends up like going in and like buying the camera and he sets it up and he's like testing it out. And he eventually sets his sights on like this one woman that's
Hmm.
in her apartment and he's just like, oh yeah, like she looks really nice. And so he kind of like concocts this idea in his head that like I'm gonna go take this woman out on a date and I'm going to have sex with her and I'm going to film it too
Yeah,
without her knowing.
yeah, yeah. So he's setting it up, and I like the setup for it because like he talks about computer dating. It's 1970. I couldn't believe it.
I
Um.
know, that's what I thought. I was like, when I was watching it, like, because they're talking about like, oh yeah, like I'm here from the computer dating service, like, like I guess back then, you could just like throw in like people's names and it would spit them out or whatever. And
Mhm.
but obviously he goes in there and he's lying and he's just like, oh, like I'm so sorry, like I here, like, do you mind if I use your phone? And he like
Mhm.
calls up like he pretends to call up the computer dating service and he's like it's like I got these tickets to this nice show, I was gonna take her out to this nice dinner too and
Mhm.
now the whole night's ruined, like I like what happened here? And she's listening, she's like, oh, that sounds nice, that sounds like a fun idea type of thing.
Yeah, and eventually it's a long scene too, but eventually he kind of goes like oh, well, you know what? I want to be forward, but what if we went on a date? I'm here. And so of course they end up going on a date and Robert De Niro concocts like this fake story, this fake emotional story to kind of woo her, and she like tells everything about herself to him as well.
Yeah, they are like getting to know each other, and he's like just feeding her a bunch of BS, like just to get on her good side and everything. And
Exactly.
uh,
But
he,
intercut between all of this is interviews on the street of black people like going up to white people asking them if they know what it's like to be black, or they interview black people on the street, or like it's just like a group talking about race. And this comes into play later, but at this point in the movie it's very random in the middle of the movie.
yeah, and I I think I never found out for sure, but I was like, I'd be willing to bet those were like real interactions that they had, because
I could see it.
those people seemed like super caught off guard. They're just like,
Mhm.
what? Like, eh,
Yeah. Well, because they're throwing some crazy stuff in their face. Just could you imagine? There's like a guy walking off the subway and getting asked these questions. I would also be like, no, I don't want to talk to you.
they're like, oh, like, you don't want to talk about being a black man. Like, what if I was like, it's like, would you like to know what it's like to be a black man in this society? And just, and like, I think one guy was just like, I don't know what you're talking about,
Yeah,
type of
right.
thing.
Yeah. So yeah, that's intercut between this. So you kind of already have this idea that there's two plot lines going on. Um, but they are planning on doing like a play, which is about like what if you were black. So it's taking white people and painting them black so they can know what it's like to be a black person.
Yeah, but before that scene though, it's like
Yes.
the ending of this vignette is like he does finally like woo this girl, and it's like, I'm going to, like, I'm going to have sex with this woman. And
Mhm.
um so he sets up the camera at his apartment, and he sets it up in a way where everything is on a timer, and he's like,
Yeah,
he
he's
gives
like got it
himself,
down to the second.
he's got it down to the second. And the problem is like, he's like, okay, so like, um I'm gonna go over there. I need to like plan it out. Like, I'm gonna go in, we're gonna have some foreplay for a little bit, and we're gonna have like, like, then it's gonna start getting some hot and heavy, and then we're gonna have sex, and that's when the camera's gonna turn on, like right in the middle of it. And
Mhm.
the problem is like, as soon as he gets to her apartment, she's immediately like, let's have sex right now.
Yeah,
Like, and
trying
he's
to
just
get
like,
her on the bed, get him on the
and he's
bed.
and he's like, no, 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 I can't, I can't. It's like,
Yeah, he's like, no, no, not now. It's too early. And he starts crying about like a past lover, and she's like laughing, like, why are you telling me this?
yeah, like right as he like starts crying, and he's like, no, no, what's for lunch? Like, what are you gonna make me from lunch? It's like, I'm a,
Yeah,
and then he finally, he's just like,
that's
uh,
right. He keeps saying
he's
4 minute eggs. He keeps going
yeah.
on about 4 minute eggs, which I've never heard before. Which is just like in like Bone, where he talks about that whatever eggs he eats in that movie. There's too many ways to make eggs.
And then he's like, I don't have a condom, and she's just like, who cares? Like, I don't care. Like, and he's just like, no, I need it. So he goes down to the drugstore, and then there's like this
This was a
another
funny
really,
bit.
it was funny, but it's just so weird. And it
Yeah,
just,
because he's like, yeah, I need a condom or a prophylactic.
I need a contraceptive or a prophylactic. And he's like, which one do you need? He's like, well, any one, it's fine. He's like,
I'm gonna have sex right now. What works best for right now?
right now, right now. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, oh. And then he's like, so I got these condoms. We got Trojan lubed or unlubed, and then
Yeah,
we have a personal massager.
yeah, he's on a vibrator and is showing it, and Robert De Niro's just like, "Oh, okay, uh-huh." It's so silly.
It's like, yeah, it's like a commercial for condoms, and it's just like this guy's like, it's like, are these pretty straight? He's like, oh yeah, yeah, give it a stretch. See, it's like, they're like, wow, yeah, that's something, right? And it's,
It's so offbeat. And then he goes
uh,
upstairs and has sex with her.
yeah, well, and the gag was that whole thing is that it ends up while they're having sex, the camera accidentally tilts downwards and
Yeah.
misses all the action. Instead, gets like a naked guy painting himself black.
Yes, yeah. Which I don't know, it's weird because like in this version, we do see him painting his dong black. But I guess like that's the uncut version because I guess this movie was originally rated X and they cut that out of the movie. Like that whole part. But I guess we we're
Oh,
watching the
no,
uncut version.
we got the uncut
Oh,
version,
yeah,
but they had the
uncut in two
circumcised
ways.
and
Yeah,
they had the circum.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, they did one take circumcised, one not.
Which
Could
one
you
looks better?
imagine?
Oh God.
Yeah,
But
I like the uncircumcised version.
more realistic.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, like that doesn't because when he does take the movie over to the sleazeball guy, he's basically just like, it's like, okay, here it comes, here it comes. It's like, and you see it, they're making out, and then they go down to the floor. He's like, all right, now this is the part where we just like rip all of our clothes off and start going at it, and then it just
Hmm.
pans down to that guy that was naked, and the guy's just like, what the hell's this? Like, what, where is it? And he's like, no, no, it's coming up, I swear.
But yeah.
And then
Um,
but yeah, and that's kind of like the ending of that because the guy just kicks him out and fires him or
yeah.
whatever.
Why did that have to be the end of that plot line? I feel like that worked.
I I would have been really interested in seeing like a full movie of like that, like him like doing weird stuff like that.
Yeah, I totally agree because I think it works here. Robert De Niro is actually pretty funny in the role. Um, yeah, even with like the weird vignettes and stuff, that was working for me.
Yeah. So the movie, like kind of what you were referring to earlier, that goes into the second part of this movie, which is the acting troupe. And basically what it is, it's these group of black actors that they're performing their own play, but it's going to be like an interactive play of what it's like to be a black man in
Hmm.
America or a black person because they end up just pulling like these random women and men off the street and they come in for this show and they immediately just start like hassling them, just like they put
Hmm.
like shoe polish on their face, they're all in blackface, and then
Hmm.
all the black actors are putting like white face paint on
Hmm.
and just like okay, or they're like okay, now we're white and you guys are black now. And
Yeah.
just
And it's a long sequence that's honestly like hard to watch. Not just because it's like rough, but also like the way it's shot. It's first person, bad camera quality and black and white, just like long sequence of them berating these white people, just like beating them up, pretending to like almost rape a lady, like basically scaring the crap out of them. And it's so
it's a real
long.
it's a really agonizing sequence, and Robert De Niro is not in this part that much because
No.
he gets cast quotes as a policeman in the play.
Hmm.
And what happens is they come in and they start just like very subtly like hassling them at first, like one girl's
Hmm.
like, oh, here, let me take your purse. And
Yeah.
her purse is gone and she's just like, wait, where's my purse? Where did my purse go? Like, take the other people's purses and just
Yeah, because I think the idea at first is it's like, oh, it's kind of playful, funny, like, oh, we're gonna treat you poorly. But then it like takes a turn with that purse of like, oh, wait, these people are actually here to like hurt us.
yeah. And it goes into like this really long sequence, like you said, where they go and they're physically assaulting these people, and then like you said, they start sexually assaulting this
Hmm.
one woman, and she's screaming like bloody murder,
Hmm.
and then Robert De Niro shows up as like a white cop, and is just like, all right, like I'm here to break all this stuff up, and it, immediately starts blaming the people in blackface. And it's like, okay, you guys, it's obviously you guys are the troublemakers here type
Yes.
of thing. And they all start saying their names and it's like, white people, it's like, no, no, it's like that's not his name.
Yeah, and they start
It's like
saying horrible things.
yeah, like really racist names. And it's like, no, that was like, oh yeah, you look like that type of guy or whatever. So
Yeah.
um
And in the
but
whole
yet
time the white people in blackface are like screaming and like crying, saying they want to get out of here.
yeah, they're screaming and all that. And then at the very end, the gag is like they go out there and then everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that was a really great experience." I
Hmm.
had such a great time, and even like the woman that was being sexually assaulted was just like, it really put things into perspective. I'm going to tell all my friends about this, and like I want them to come out and experience this too. And and then all the like the black actors, they all get really mad at that because it's like that's not what they wanted. They didn't want them to
Yeah.
like it. They wanted them to change their ways or have like a like a real like mental awakening or whatever.
Yeah, and like even Robert De Niro's with them, and they're all agreeing, like, oh, they learned nothing. They learned absolutely nothing from this.
Yeah, and this is kind of like that part I really didn't care for because I kind of felt like it brought the movie to a halt a little bit, and then
It did, yeah. I mean, and I didn't realize it's going to cut off like almost the entire movie because like it takes like a really interesting idea and then just kind of slashes it, and then like it does something that I don't think is as interesting, and also just I understand that Brian De Palma, he's probably young then. He just wanted to make something just like, oh, in your face, very different, like very stylized, but it doesn't make it interesting.
I get they were trying to go for something a lot more thought-provoking, and it was
Hmm.
supposed to be something like, oh wow, like I never really thought of it that way, but
Hmm.
I it seemed like I would have liked to have like a more weirder movie like the one that they were kind of like playing with in the first half. And then like kind of like the ending of this movie, like I really didn't understand like what the point was, to be quite honest with you.
Oh no, I
Um
totally agree because it's almost like Taxi Driver, but like without like any like real connector there. Because all of a sudden it's just like, oh, I'm gonna do a terrorist bombing now. That's what I plan on
yeah,
doing.
right. So he and the black actors are like, okay, we got to take this to the streets type of
Hmm.
thing, and like really like, and basically like let's like go to people's houses and like pretend to do this play in other people's houses, but instead like all these black actors end up dying or getting gunned down because they're just like running into people's apartments without and
Hmm.
everything, and eventually they're like, oh, three or like several months later or whatever, and it's like Robert De Niro has now married the woman from the first
Yeah,
half of this
and he's
movie.
acting like a just like a normal dad, like with a picket fence, and
Yeah,
she's
like they're
pregnant.
in the
That's right.
she's pregnant, they're living together, and they're having this long conversation. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'll buy you a new clothes washer." And she's like, "Okay, I want it to be yellow." He's like, "No, no, it could be white." She's like, "No, come on, I really want a yellow one." And like you said, it was revealed that she's pregnant. And then in the next scene, Robert De Niro goes down to like the laundromat that's like downstairs from the building and then blows up the building which his wife or whatever was in. And I
Yep.
guess, and that's kind of where the movie ends. Like, where there's like a news report at the end, and everyone's just like, man, I can't believe this happened in this neighborhood. This is disgusting. I really wish this wouldn't happen. And then Robert De Niro shows up, and I felt like you said when you said Taxi Driver, like that's like the vibe I was getting because he
Yeah.
shows up in like like his military jacket, and he's like, oh yeah, like I hate to see this. I came back from Vietnam, and I hate to see stuff like this. And they're like, what did you do in Vietnam? He's like, oh, I was actually a demolitions expert. It's just
Yeah, and he keeps like rambling, and like even the newscaster is like, "Oh, you wanna? We got to go. What's the last thing you want to say?" And he says the title of the movie. He
he
says,
says greetings.
"Greetings." That would have been funny. No, he says, "Hi, mom," and I did laugh. But I think I actually I laughed and I went, "What?" Like I really was
I,
like, "Huh? That's
I
really how
when
this ends?"
yeah, because I saw like the progress bar of this movie, and I'm like, this movie's almost over. Like,
Hmm.
how are they going to tie this up? And they don't really, to be
No,
honest. And it's kind of like one of those movies, like this movie, where I was really getting kind of interested into the first half, and I really wanted to be a lot more of that, like you said. But I feel like they were trying to go for like, oh no, we really got to hammer this message home or something. So the movie does get kind of hindered for me in a lot of the second half, and it brings it down quite a bit, to
I
be
agree.
honest. And I would have liked this movie a lot more had it been a lot more focused on that first half. So, um, for me, I don't think I could give this movie a recommend because it's way too out there and way too not very consistent.
No, I agree. It's a not recommend for me either. I love my De Palma, but it's just like you said, interesting start. But man, I get it. Like this movie, it is trying to be zany almost. Like, oh, we're gonna do like multiple different things, and you're never gonna know quite where this movie goes. But it's kind of almost like watching what do you call that? Like a movie like Creep Show, where it's like multiple vignettes or multiple stories put together, where like only one story is good and the rest of the stories are bad. So overall, it's just kind of a bad movie, and that's kind of
Yeah.
what this becomes, unfortunately.
Yeah. It really kind of disappointing a little bit. So I would have liked to be a lot more. Maybe Greetings is better. I don't know, but I
Yeah,
remember reading the synopsis and it sounded like it was going to be a lot more of the vignette type of movie. So I think that's what it's going to end up being, to be quite honest. But maybe it's better. Who knows? But
who
for
knows?
now, I think that's going to do it for this one. So Nathan, what are we going to talk about next time?
All right, Ryan, on Tuesday, we are going to be talking about It Came from Outer Space. And that one is streaming on Tubi and Prime Video. But Ryan, what are we covering on Thursday?
Well, Nathan, one thing I hate the most is getting my car towed.
Really? Yeah, I hate that too. So, what movie's about car towing?
So we're gonna watch the movie Towing, and that
What?
is and that is on Tubi for free right now.
Awesome.
I know you're excited about it.
I don't even,
So,
yeah. Woo. I love
but
tow trucks.
but anyway, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any thoughts and opinions, please email us over at drivein doubleFeaturePodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to check out the Patreon over at patreon.com/drivein doubleFeaturePodcast. But until next time.
Until next time.